Welcome to Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, the podcast show. I am your host, Carrie Roberts, and today I have two lovely guests, Greg and Beth Langston. Together, they both have over 20 years of experience in the education and professional leadership space, and they've been working to help students mentor them figure out a little bit more about their life path. And I am excited to have you both here, so welcome.
Well, thank you, Carrie. We're glad to be here.
We were really looking forward to this show, so we're happy to be here as well. Yes.
Yes. So I want to start kind of, with our own experience, and I think you're a different generation than myself. Those that are potentially going to college now are a different generation. Do you see any correlation in terms of there's still these kind of same issues or fears that students have and kind of what's different now going into 2022?
Gosh, it's changed a lot over the years, especially since we were in school. That was back in the day, and it wasn't nearly as competitive. We didn't apply to as many schools as kids apply to these days. And then when our kids came up doing this, they applied to a lot of schools and they had to write some essays. And now, I just finished at least 17 essays with one of my students who is applying to different schools. A lot of parents think, oh, it's only one essay, so we can do that, the beginning of senior year. If you're applying to different schools, they have supplemental essays. You have to do research on the schools.
You've been doing that for months with this young lady.
Yes, we've been working on it since July. So, but finally, she has two more that are due January. Stanford, I think, and UPenn are her last two that she's going to apply to. So we still have more to write, but we've completed about 17. So that's the part about applying that's hard. And even this year, the application rate has gone up. So the acceptance rate is going to go down. It's going to get lower because they can't afford, or they don't have room to take all these great students that are applying. Even good students, well qualified, get rejected.
It's gone up. It's interesting. I was curious because with COVID, I didn't know if people, some schools are still kind of doing online or hybrid, if people were still feeling like, okay, that's something I want to do.
Yeah. And I think that might change after this year, but this year it has gone up. I don't know what's going to happen next. A lot of people are rethinking, is college right for me? Do I want to take that year off? Do I want to explore other options, which is so important to do because college is not for everybody. And sometimes I think the education they're getting in college these days is not what it used to be. There's a lot of fluff there. That's unnecessary. So, and they spend a lot of time, as the statistics will show, changing majors because they don't really know what they want to do. The students don't. And I get that. If you haven't had a chance to explore opportunities, you're going to get into a line of study that you think, oh my gosh, this isn't interesting to me. So then they switch it. What's the statistic, Greg?
60% of all college grads actually take 6 years to graduate. It's not the 4-year program. Only 40% of college graduates graduate in 4 years. And so the reason is because they're not doing their self-discovery in terms of figuring out what is it that they're good at, what is it that they want to do, what should they study. And now with the advent of YouTube and social media, not all social media is bad. Some of it obviously is, but they can learn an awful lot of things on the web that they may determine. Counter to what happened when we were growing up, you didn't have an option. You didn't really say, I'm going to go, become a welder, or I'm going to seek a profession that's outside of college. In my family, it was basically, I'm paying for it, you're going to college, and you're going to Purdue. That was basically it. I think
where I grew up in Southern Indiana, we were in the minority, actually, if we went to college. It wasn't, everybody didn't go to college. They did go get other professions back then. And then it changed to everybody going to college. And maybe we'll swing back the other way.
And so we advocate to young people and parents of young people to really embrace that self-discovery and figure out what is it that you really want to do? What is it that you're passionate about? Because we were talking before we got on the air, a statistic that really blows me away, that a full 87% of students between the ages of 16 and 29 have no purpose or meaning. 87%, which is shocking.
Which don't you think that contributes, I feel like, to, I mean, putting the pandemic aside, sometimes those mental health issues of anxiety and depression, because I think everyone feels that, but especially young people in their 20s feel like this need of, I have to have a purpose, I have to know what it is. And when you don't know, you don't feel great about that.
Right, because what people, kids and grown-ups want to know is where they belong, what
Mhm.
they do well, and how they can make a difference. And if as parents we're working on this with our young people, it will help them get propelled into a better path when choosing a career.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were talking beforehand. I know, Greg, you were mentioning, and you just mentioned here that, it was kind of like Purdue was like a family legacy. Like that's, you're going, no choice.
Exactly.
There's still a lot of that today. People have the flags out, of their house and
Yeah.
waving around. Then you have
Right.
some that say, and different countries have different ones. If you have to be a lawyer or a doctor. Meanwhile, these kids are maybe not great at math or science, let alone not excited about it. And then, like you said, some people, maybe they're not sure if they should go to college. I mean, when people are having kind of all these different outside opinions, and then especially if somebody says, well, I'm paying for part of it, how do they kind of deal with all of that outside noise and figure out exactly what they want in terms of, do I even want to go to school, and what should I maybe be studying?
Well, to even compound it and talk about the third rail that you haven't even said is the whole impact of social media.
Yes.
People value themselves based upon their social media feed and looking at their friends that are traveling to exotic places or in fancy cars or the sky's the limit. That's how they're measuring themselves, and that's perfection. And that's a false mental construct, because you're always going to be disappointed. You're never going to get there. It's kind of like going to the horizon when you're on an airplane. And as you're flying towards the horizon and you're getting closer to it, what happens to the horizon? It moves away. That's like perfection. You're never going to get there. So that's why it's important for students to determine, what am I good at? What are my strengths? What are my values? What really makes me unique? And there's a process that we take people through to help them to learn that. And that's how we learned it. That's how we put it together with our kids.
But Carrie, what I wanted to say too about these kids that are struggling with, do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to be a doctor?
Mhm.
We highly recommend getting time in those professions. Our son thought his whole life that he wanted to go into medicine. And then he got into high school. He thought, oh, I think I want to be a surgeon. So he had an opportunity because he asked, could I go to work with you? So he went to work with a neurosurgeon and a cardiovascular surgeon and went in the operating room, even sewed up some people. I said, I'm so glad it wasn't me on the table. And
Couldn't do that today.
no, thankfully. And at the end of the time, he said, this isn't at all what I want to be. I didn't know. He said, I feel like I was a car mechanic instead of interacting with the people. Anyway, he went into the financial world and does great today. And who knew? He never even had that on his list of things that he wanted to do. So if kids can knock on doors, get experience, say, I'd like to come to work with you for a week and see what it's really like doing this, that will help clarify a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that kind of mentoring perspective is huge. And I remember, so my college experience, I have a BFA in dance, so I have a dance degree. So it was already different than someone who'd had maybe communications or something. And we had to take a certain amount of basic courses. But I just remember, like, why do I have to take this same history class that I've taken since second grade, basically? And then there were all these different majors. I was an English minor, and I remember taking one class on linguistics, and I was like, wait, this is a thing? Like all these things that I had never heard of. And even now as an adult, different jobs, different titles, in the AI space, new things are coming that colleges didn't have back then. I think
Mhm.
there's like a disservice sometimes that universities do where they don't show, like, look at all these different things that you can do.
Mhm.
And I kind of wish that we had a moment where we could like test that the first year. Is that happening, or do you talk about that at all with students?
They're not testing it necessarily the first year. We actually recommend starting earlier than that, exploring
Mhm.
all these. Don't wait till you get to college, because hopefully when you get there, you have a better idea of what you want to do if you've been able to explore. I mean, young people, junior high, high school, if you are creative and proactive as a family, as a young person, to go and seek out those opportunities, you're going to learn a lot about the professions that you think you might like. We recommend starting early. If you wait till college, you will be one of those 60% that changes majors 3 times, which happens. We have people who've changed majors 7 times that we've talked to, you know. So, and I'm sure there are many more, but some people are professional students, and the thing is, the
It's
debt.
costly.
What's the college debt today?
1.7 trillion.
1.7.
And so if you look at the lowest cost schools today, in-state tuition is probably around 30,000. And you go to Ivies that it's 80,000 plus, and you're in there for 2 years.
2 more years.
2 more years to get to the 6 years. Or you have people that they don't want to go to college, but they were told by their parents, either patriarch and matriarch, and in certain cultures, that's what you're going to do. They go and they don't like it. They party and then they drop out and they've got 6 figures worth of debt to pay for. And they also have to provide a living with a job that doesn't fulfill them. And so, it really is a vicious circle that we try and help these young people to figure out. And the way it came about is because I was running large corporations and they were investing tons of money, well over $600,000 in my leadership development. So when I'm leading, 100 people or up to 9,000 people, I needed different skills. And so each time I'd come back from that training, I'd say to Beth, who's a trained educator, why aren't we teaching this to kids?
Yeah. Why did he have to wait 20 years to learn these important things that are so helpful, so valuable to everybody, no matter what you do?
And so we began by putting these into workshops 20 years ago, and it worked with our kids. We didn't kill them.
They were our guinea pigs, though.
And, we have other students that have gone through our process 20 years ago, one of which was recently named top 20 under 40 in Miami Beach, which is not a bad city.
And his nephew, so we're multi-generational now. His nephew just went through our program. He's from Albania, actually. And he went through our program, is now in school in Florida. So pretty exciting.
Yeah. And I think, when we were talking before and through your website, talking a lot about, really kind of getting this early on. Do you think that we as people, we're always changing, but do you think if people kind of figure this out early on, that's going to be kind of consistent through their life, or will they need to kind of keep redoing this as they get older, you think?
My personal belief is that you put a stake in the ground, you can revisit it, your goals, you set up lifetime goals when you're 65, and people say, how can a kid make goals when they're 65 in the areas of health, wealth, wisdom, and relationships? And we take them through a process that really allows them to do that. Then they set up 5-year goals and 1-year goals that support that. And they revisit the lifetime goals every year in December.
Nothing's set in stone, we always like to say.
Mm-hmm.
But they're actually going in their true north, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
They're identifying their own personal true north. And you couple that with their value system that is extremely important to understand why you make decisions and how you make decisions following your value statements. And those are things that we think are very important and are not being taught in schools. For example, many parents that are listening today may think, well, I'm going to a great public school or a great private school, and they have the college admissions officers that are not the college admissions, the college counselors that are going to teach my kids what they do or what to do. The average amount of students, there are 424 students per college advisor in the United States today.
And they recommend 200 per advisor. And here in California, we have 900 per college advisor.
So there's no way you're going to get the individualized attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember in high school, my counselor was the worst. So she did not get who I was and kind of pushed her own agenda and lost stuff. It was just, you had to be your own advocate. So I agree. So what is maybe kind of some actionable tips? What are some of the first things that you do when you have a student working with you to kind of start this process to figure out, again, what is my life's purpose? Should I go to school? What should I study? What's kind of those maybe first 3 things that you recommend that you do with them?
Well, the first reaction is like, oh crap. Mom and dad gave me this course. My hair's on fire. I'm already doing too many things. Why am I doing this thing? And so what we do is we come alongside them and say, listen, this story is all about you. It's not about your parents. It's not about anybody else but you. And you say, really? It's about me.
Yeah.
And you kind of come alongside them and you say, listen, we're going to teach you skills that took us an extra 20 years to learn. We're going to learn these 20 years before any of your peers do. And so then their ears start to perk up. The other thing is all the video training is mobile optimized, because the audience has the attention span of a tsetse flyer. And so every video on average is less than 3 minutes long. And so we attach one piece of content with one deliverable that goes into either phone enabled or laptop enabled resources. So we go through 3 phases. The first one is discovery, where they learn a whole bunch of stuff about themselves that they don't learn in school, such as what are your values? How do you put those values into practice? When you are in college and no one's around, your friends are different and your parents aren't around, how are you going to make decisions that support your values? They then take a 360 assessment where they get feedback from up to 8 trusted advisors that they select. The student selects 8 people, including an accountability partner. And why is this important? If any of us that are listening today say, I'm going to lose 5 pounds, and you write it down, the probability is single digit that you'll do it. If you share it with your ecosystem and your friends and family, and you say, listen, this is what I'm going to do, you're going to get shamed into probably doing 65% probability that you're going to get it done. However, if you pick an accountability partner, that goes up, the probability goes up to 95% of completion. And so that's why we have the students pick an accountability partner who's going to be there with them to make sure that goes through. So they get 200 data points from these 8 different people that care about them saying, this is what you do really well. This is what you suck at. And you might want to consider. This is how you add value to other people. And these are the things that we think you need to consider studying, or a vocation that you would be really good at. So the student gets that information, which they don't get anyplace else, 200 data points of that information, coupled with some assessments that identify how they instinctively problem solve. And they develop what we call a distinct natural abilities paragraph that basically says, this is your wheelhouse. In your young years, when you're 15, 16, 17, you're not really sure what you do well and what you don't do well. We help them to craft a paragraph that says, this is my wheelhouse and this is what I do really well, so that when I volunteer in school or after hours or in sports, I know I'm going to do well at that, which then leads to a purpose statement, their why, if you will, and then we lead to lifetime goals. So that's all in the discovery process, which, I went through it pretty quickly, but you can see the value of learning all that stuff about yourself.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's not only good to do that at a young age for all of us to continuously do that. One of the things that I think, again, we kind of touched on it a little bit, is, so let's say the student does this, they feel pretty good about it, but they go home and the parents are like, well, that's great, but no, like, you need to be doing this. Or is that maybe not someone you work with because you're looking for parents that say, hey, I need help to guide my children on the right path, versus a parent saying, well, that's great, but you're still going to be a software engineer. That's what I've decided for you.
Well, what we found as a result of the process, they go through the discovery, then they direct what they're going to do. They determine what's important to them, what majors they're going to study. And then they say, this is how I'm going to direct it. They create their own elevator speech, which is a 1 minute memorized speech, where they present to their parents at the end of the session, as compared to other programs when, a parent says, I'm sending you to a program, and they say, how was school? And how was the program? And the kid grunts or says, fine. What they have to do, what's part and parcel to this program, is that the student sets up a meeting. In fact, we have just finished with a customer in Bogota, Colombia, and he's getting up in his Sunday best, dressed up in his suit to meet with his parents, because he's going to say, Mom and Dad, based upon this process that you put me through, these are my values. This is why they're important. These are my lifetime goals. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. This is my purpose. This is my distinct natural ability. These are the majors that I'm going to focus on. Would you like to hear my elevator speech as to why I would be a great engineer, but not a doctor as you suggested that I would be? I can still make a wonderful living, but it's not going to be in the profession that you thought was right for me. That provides a totally different conversation with the parents, as you might imagine.
And usually the parents are floored. It is so fun to be in that room or in that Zoom now with them when they're telling their parents about who they are. And we've had moms in tears saying, I've known you for 16 years and I didn't know all this about you. This is wonderful. And it helps give everybody a little bit more confidence when they see the transformation in their child, the clarity that they have, knowing their strengths and weaknesses, their purpose, and what they're going to do with their lives. When the parents see this confidence that this kid has now and clearly articulating what makes him or her unique, and they can use all that information in their college application process and essays too, which is cool. And then the sense of control that this kid has over their future because they have actionable plans and goals. It is really cool. It takes the stress out of a lot of situations and adds a little bit of peace to the family.
Yeah, I love that. I think, like you said, kind of even though they're teenagers, technically not, under 18, they're showcasing their maturity and saying this, I've thought about this and this is why, versus going off on a whim, which maybe sometimes parents worry about. And so that's a really unique piece to it. And I love that you do that. How do you, in your process, work with students to translate what they like, what their values are, to a major or to a job title, if it's not something like doctor or engineer, but something kind of maybe more creative or something unique? How do you kind of get them to choose a certain path?
Well, what we do is we give them examples as they select. It's kind of a layering process as we start very specifically with the values in order to present a visual picture for you. Imagine the cross section of a very large tree. And at the bottom of the tree, what's holding that tree in the ground are the roots, which we call the value system. And then that holds up the trunk of the tree, which is the purpose. And that holds up the branches and the leaves, the fruit, which are the goals and objectives. And so it all builds upon each other. And as we take the student through and as they get the feedback from eight different people saying, you know what, you would make a really good doctor, or you'd be a great architect, or you'd be a great welder. And look at these skills. I've seen stories and I've seen instances when you've done this, this, and this. It really gives them a sense of confidence. And they go back and they look at stories in their lives in terms of what conversations they had with mentors and with relatives that inspired them, both in a positive as well as in a negative way. Sometimes the greatest motivator can be, I never want to be in that situation again. And so they get these discoveries and they layer that on level by level, step by step, 2.5 minute, 3 minute increments at a time. And they come out at the other end with that transformation that Beth was describing.
And about the college majors and things, sometimes it's not an exact major, but it's in the direction that they have discovered that they are gifted to study or interested in or have the strengths to do that.
You see what Beth just did there? She made sure that I answered the question that you asked. So,
active listening is a key thing that we all need to do. You know why? I'll tell you, Carrie, it's because I've been doing all these college essays with the kids lately. And when the colleges write their prompts, they take great care to write what they're asking, because a lot of it is to see, are you listening? Are you able to answer the questions that we are asking? A lot of times they do that on purpose. So it's about, not going off on a tangent sometimes and actually answering that question directly. And colleges look for that. It's a key thing to learn.
But
did you know that?
But fortunately, I have come back, and I'm going to add that as part of our process, when you're dealing with the majors, we have them pick their core majors, which is their primary major, a secondary or a minor, and then a third one, which is they're not as committed to, but that prioritization helps them gain clarity, because they may want to be an engineer, but they're not really sure what type of engineering they want to be in, so that they can explore different aspects of it. And we recommend that they go visit a college and go to a camp during the summers if they want to. All the universities have camp. They make money that way, and they also can place their best foot forward. With COVID now, I'm sure they're doing it virtually and otherwise. Yeah. But the fact is, you pick 3 majors that you can choose from. And so there, I answered the question.
Do you find that, like I said, as we're going into 2022, has there been any type of consistency with the type of students you work with, either in what they value or kind of the direction they're trying to go in?
Oh, no, I mean, they're all over the board, really, and which is fun. You never know what you're going to get, and as we help them with their essays, that's when their real stories come out. But they're as dedicated as past students, even though they've been through a tough COVID
Yeah.
time, and I do find a lot of kids are addressing interest or more awareness of how important mental health is also for
Yes.
them and others, which is great. We find a lot of kids doing entrepreneurial projects because of COVID, which is also great. And colleges love that. If we can write about that and if you're helping your community, it's wonderful. So, yeah, I think they're trying to be more creative with what they're doing to get into college. What universities are looking for a well-rounded student body, not necessarily a well-rounded student. So they're going to fit these students in a slot that they're looking for on campus that fits. Oh, I need somebody in this area. So we always tell our students don't have such a smattering of community projects or things like that. It's better to have a dedicated interest in a few projects than just a surface interest in a lot.
I would say another consistency that we find in the students as they go through this process is that they learn to say, listen, I'm too stressed. I'm doing 3 sports. Why am I doing 3 sports? I don't need to do 3 sports if this is what I want to do. I can deselect things that no
Yes.
longer are necessary, which lessens the stress. We also find that they all complain about watching too much social media and not getting enough sleep. And these are habits that we help them identify. What are things that you're going to do to eliminate if you want to achieve these goals? What are a couple of things that you're doing today that are not contributing positively to that? And those are the 2 that typically come through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, I feel like the Gen Z now, there's so much about really fully being themselves. So I think it's interesting for you to say, no, it's all over the board. People are really saying, no, I want to be who I am. I mean, that's been a plus side to social media. Some people are able to express that online and they want to do that in real life too. So I think that's wonderful. If people want to, go ahead.
I was going to say another thing about social media is
Yeah.
the colleges will look at that. A lot of kids don't realize this. So keep it clean. If they're, colleges are going to look up who you are. If it gets down to choosing you or another gal, they're going to look up, oh, what does she have online? Is it positive? Is it good? Is it helpful? Or is it not so good? So we always tell them, clean it up.
Yes,
Delete
people are watching everywhere. Jobs do that too. Dating, it's
Yes.
everywhere. You gotta make sure
it
you're
is.
presenting yourself how you want to be seen, right?
Right.
So if people want to learn more or they want to connect, where's the best place to do that?
Well, they can reach out to Beth directly at beth@collegeflightplan.com or greg@collegeflightplan.com. By definition, collegeflightplan.com is our website. And for your listeners, those parents that are out there, we've created a parent starter kit to teen self-discovery, which has a lot of the information we've talked about, plus some additional resources that they can get by going to collegeflightplan.com/guide.
Perfect. Well, before we finish, the last question I like to ask all of my guests, and I'll ask it to each of you, is what is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day?
Well, I'll start. I'm going to give you 2, actually. If it's one word, it is the word yet, that I have not learned that yet, which from a growth mindset, you can learn just about anything. You can even learn how to do brain surgery on yourself. It probably won't be pretty, but you can probably find something on it. But a little more extended is what I would, if I were to leave with your listeners, I would say, we created what we call the high potential essentials. These are 6 things that if you do as an individual contributor in school, work, or in your family, you'll be better off. Number 1 is identify and live by your values. 2 is do what you say you will do. Arrive on time. Finish what you start. Say please, thank you, and you're welcome. And last but not least, be willing to apologize when you're wrong.
Oh, I like those are good. This should be hung up somewhere. I like those ones.
Right.
Beth, what about you?
Yeah, so I would say mine is grace, and show yourself grace. If we can start by showing ourselves grace, we all make mistakes, we all blow it, we all, fall short at different times. But if we can show ourselves grace, we're going to be able to show that grace to other people around us, and that is so key. Forgive, forget, don't worry. Is it going to make a difference next week?
Yeah, I love it. Well, I thank you both for sharing your insight and finding your purpose and passion in the work that you do. And thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks, Carrie. We sure had a good time.
It's been great. Thanks, Carrie.